As we reported earlier, former President Bill Clinton at the Clinton Global Initiative discussed issues important to business, including wages, the shrinking middle class, and what corporations care about most.
Company after company takes more of its profits and spends it on dividends, stock buybacks, management increases, and less on sharing it with the employees broadly.
That, he said, will change over the next few years, but it could be one of the reasons why many Americans don't have a strong opinion of corporations. In a recent CNBC Burson-Marsteller survey on corporate perception, 52% of people in developed nations have a favorable view of corporations, compared to 72% in developing countries. So what role do corporations have in society? Bill George, former CEO of Medtronic and now a professor of management at Harvard Business School, joins us to discuss this issue. Bill, thanks for coming on the program. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Susie.
You know, another statistic out of that survey that sort of stood out for me, it says 4 in 10 millennials and baby boomers view corporations as a source of fear, not hope. So my question to you is, why the disconnect, and is it important to American corporations to fix this perception?
Absolutely. It's essential. We've had 12 years of breaching the trust, going all the way back to Enron and then the financial crisis in 2008. And a lot of corporations are trying to rebuild it, but it takes a long time to rebuild that trust. And I think that's where we've got to go right now. President Clinton had it right.
So you clearly think that corporate misbehavior is a contributor to the reason why Americans have a lower view of corporate sort of imagery than foreigners do. Does the wealth gap play in there as well, Bill?
No doubt about it. The fact that Americans aren't earning as much and they're not sharing in the success of companies, I think that plays a big factor. And the fact that the government has been coming at business, instead of supporting our great global companies, the government's doing everything it can to fine them, to penalize them, to send them to jail. And I think this has caused a breach of trust as well.
It seems also there's a disconnect between what corporate America thinks their responsibilities are. I mean, we just heard from President Clinton saying that, you know, they have to do more for the social good, so to speak, and that seems what the American public wants. Is there a way to bridge this misperception?
Well, I think the CEOs today, we have the best group of CEOs we've ever had, and they're committed to rebuilding his trust. Every CEO I know, and I've spent a lot of time with a number of CEOs, is committed to this. But there's this clash between the Wall Street desires, a short-term, let's make money now, the activist investors, people like Carl Icahn and Nelson Peltz taking on great companies like DuPont and PepsiCo. And this clash is hurting us. But business has got to recognize, I think, first and foremost, it's chartered to serve society. That's how we get our existence, whether we're in China or the U.S. or Japan.
Of course, I guess those activist investors, Bill, would obviously say we're having a salutary effect on corporations. We're making them better. That's for another conversation, obviously. But I wonder why you think people not in the United States have a more favorable view of large corporations than we do. Is it because they don't know them as well? Why?
Well, they haven't had the battering of large companies. They see them as the job providers, as I do, the wealth creators that are building these developing countries. And frankly, a lot of resources are going there as we don't have the growth opportunities in this country, Tyler.
So what do you think is going to be the wake-up call for American companies? And what's your prediction, let's say 10 years from now? Is the situation going to be the same, better, or maybe worse?
Susie, we've had our wake-up call. The answer is for CEOs to come together with government, which we haven't been able to do, and declare that we're there to serve society everywhere we go in the world. And we're not just there to serve the short-term shareholder. And if we do that well, we serve our customers through our mainstream business. We create shared value. As my colleague Michael Porter has said, we will rebuild that trust. But we've got to put customers first. You can't put the shareholders first. Shareholders come third. We've got to put the customers first, the employees first, and if we do that, we'll build great long-term companies, and the shareholders will be huge beneficiaries, as they've been the last 4 or 5 years as the stock market's risen.
That's a really interesting point, because I think an awful lot of people in the investment community would say that the ultimate responsibility of a board, of a CEO, is to serve the shareholders, and they do come first.
Well, I don't agree. The law says it's to the company and its shareholders. That's what the law says. And we've kind of forgot about the company. We want to sustain institutions. We want DuPont, Deere, you mentioned. These are great institutions. We want them to go on for another 100 years so they can compete globally and create jobs. And they're doing that, but I think people don't appreciate that. You can't just, as President Clinton said, you can't just use stock buybacks and suck up your cash that way with more and more dividends. They're fine, but we've got to invest in the companies, in research, in people, and in market expansion.
Bill, I'd love to sit in on your class at Harvard. Sounds fascinating discussion. Bill George with Harvard Business School.
Thank you. Well, that's what we teach, so thank you.
All right.